webinars, I think, no? So thank you po for being here again. Maraming salamat, and we'd like to welcome our friends who are here talking about our feeding program, no? So we are here to resume the hearing on the proposed bills amending for the purpose Republic Act 11037, otherwise known as the Masustansyang Pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act. Senator Kiko, good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, we will be discussing Senate Bills 87, 219, 431, 902, 1145, 1192, 1207, 1212, 1312, 1375, and 1471. The Committee on Basic Education, joint with the Committee on Local Government, Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, and Committee on Finance, conducted its first hearing on September 11, 2025. So good morning again to everyone. We're calling this hearing to order. Muli po, nagpapasalamat tayo sa mga bisita mula sa maraming iba't ibang grupo na kakampi at kasangga natin sa pagtugon sa krisis sa edukasyon. Dahil po sa suporta nyo at sa paglaban natin para sa estudyanteng Pilipino, nadagdagan po ang pondo para sa school-based feeding program sa ating bansa. Unang-una, mula 120 days, naging 200 days na merong pagkain ng ating mga estudyante. That in itself, dear colleagues, is already a huge reform that the committee has pushed and that the Committee on Finance has accepted. Ngayon po, bago po magtapos ang National Children's Month, babalikan natin ang estado ng nutrisyon ng ating mga kabataan. Noong September, in our first hearing, pinag-usapan po natin ang nakakabahalang statistika ng stunting sa ating bansa. Ayon po sa EDCOM, 26.7% of Filipino children under 5 years old are stunted. Over 1/4 ng mga kabataan po under 5 years old are stunted. Pag stunted po ang isang bata, mahina ang kanilang katawan at kakayanang matuto. Pag hindi po natin mabibigyan ng matimbang na atensyon, maaapektuhan din po ang kanilang kakayahang magtrabaho at pag-asang magkaroon ng maayos na kinabukasan. Ibig sabihin, isa sa bawat 4 na kabataan ay hindi na po matatamo ang kanilang tunay na potensyal dahil po sa stunting, magiging matamlay po ang kanilang kinabukasan. Kaya ngayong umaga, pakinggan po natin ang report mula po sa DSWD at NNC tungkol sa mga programa ng ating gobyerno para sa nutrisyon, para sa first 1,000 days at supplemental feeding program ng ating kabataan. And again, we'd like to thank Secretary Rex for being here today. Bago po yon, nais rin po natin bigyang diin kung gaano kahalaga ang nutrisyon sa early childhood o mula 0 to 5 years old sa edukasyon at kinabukasan ng kabataang Pilipino. Una po, mahalaga ang tamang nutrisyon sa physical and cognitive development ng kabataan. Alam naman po nating lahat na pag may tamang nutrisyon ng isang bata, mas matalas ang kanilang pag-iisip. Malakas ang mabubuong neural pathways at nakakatulong po ito sa wika, sa memorya, sa atensyon, at sa problem-solving skills. Ayon po sa EDCOM, pag sinigurado natin ang tamang nutrisyon ng mga bata mula sa first 1,000 days hanggang sa 5 years old, sinisigurado rin natin ang long-term learning capacity nila. Ibig sabihin, pag may tamang nutrisyon ng bata mula 0 to 5, mas malakas ang kakayahang nilang makaangat siya sa buhay dahil may kakayanang siyang matuto. Pangalawa po, mahalaga ang nutrisyon sa early childhood para mapigilan ang stunting. Bukod po sa school-based feeding, mahalaga rin na matutukan natin ang nutrisyon sa early childhood dahil nandito po ang highest incidence ng stunting. Sa totoo lang po, in the EDCOM report and in the 10-year education plan that we will be releasing, nakalagay po doon kung gaano kahalaga ang nutrisyon sa ating mga kabataan. And I realized in the last EDCOM hearing that a lot of our efforts are focused on the school-based feeding program. In fact, we're increasing the budget of the school-based feeding program by 19 billion, if I'm not mistaken, or 16 billion. 16 billion. Definitely a huge amount towards addressing the problem of stunting. Kaya lang po, in that hearing, lumabas rin na yung 0 to 5 actually, kailangan na nating maagapan. Kasi baka nga po, maganda yung school-based feeding program natin, pero pagpasok naman ng mga kabataan, stunted na, ay hindi naman masasayang, pero hindi magiging kasing bisa ang school-based feeding program kung yung mga batang papasok ay stunted na. So definitely mahalaga na meron din tayong focus dito sa 0 to 5 years old. And during the EDCOM hearing, we were looking around the room and we had TESDA, we had DepEd, we had CHED, we didn't have DSWD to talk about the programs that you're doing for the 0 to 5 years old. So, at that hearing, sabi ko, magandang magtawag tayo ng emergency hearing just to be able to discuss this para makita natin kung sapat na ba yung ating pagpondo at yung mga programa natin para sa mga 0 to 5 years old. Now, I also understand na yung daycare and yung pagbibigay ng pagkain through the daycare centers is relatively new compared to the school-based feeding program. No? Nag-iisang dekada na mahigit pa ang school-based feeding program. But the DSWD program is relatively new. So we also want to know how we can support, how we can help, ano yung mga potential obstacles, ano yung mga potential problems natin, and how can we truly have a robust 0 to 5-year-old feeding program para matugunan po natin yung stunting. And SecRex, in the EDCOM 2, extension of EDCOM 2 bill, we amended it to include DSWD in EDCOM 2. No, so when that bill is passed, probably in a few weeks, we will welcome you in EDCOM because we realize that the first KPA on nutrition, hindi lang po DepEd ang may responsibilidad kung hindi DSWD din. No? So we would welcome you there, but in the meantime na hindi pa pasado yung batas pong yun, we're having this hearing to discuss further kung paano po tayong pwedeng magtulungan to address stunting in our country. So mga kasama, inaasahan po natin na pag-amend ng 11037, matutugunan po natin ang talamak na issue ng stunting sa ating bansa. Ang hangarin po natin, isang Pilipinas kung saan ang mga bata ay busog, malusog at handang matuto. Habang unti-unting nilalantad ang mga issue at problema sa ating gobyerno, mas nagiging klaro na kabilang ang mga kabataan sa mga apektado. Hindi lang pagkakataon ang ninanakaw sa ating kabataan, nananakaw rin yung kinabukasan nila at ng ating bayan. Kaya para po sa amin, pondohan natin ang mga programang makakatulong talaga sa kabataan, tanggalan natin ng pondo ang mga programa o mga proyekto na posibleng magdulot lang ng korupsyon. Ang panawagan po ng aming komite, edukasyon, hindi korupsyon, at kasama po dito ang pagbibigay ng tamang nutrisyon sa ating mga kabataan. Maraming salamat. Senator Kiko, do you have an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Senator Bam. This hearing actually is a joint hearing of both the Basic Education Committee as well as the Committee on Agriculture, Public Works, and Ways and Means. No? The reason why we filed the measure of libreng almusal, which after the first hearing, I think it should now be libreng pagkain or free meals, no? Because hindi lang naman almusal ang schedule ng ating mga kabataan, is a significant component of the measure that we are proposing is sourcing the supply of the food, which we believe, if it is to be nutritious as well as fresh, then locally sourced food items should be a component of the nutrition program. And that's why in the measure that we had proposed, up to 50% of the feeding programs in schools as well as in daycare centers, wherever possible, should be sourced sa local farmers and fisher folk, which is why it blends well with the Sagip-Saka Act, wherein purchases by national and local governments of agriculture products directly from farmers and fisher folk are exempted from public bidding. And it's interesting, after our first hearing in September 1, we had worked on the approval of the GPPB resolution on Sagip-Saka, which was hanging for 3 years, and the two twin EOs, EO 100, which was issued by the President, and EO 101, also with respect to implementing purchase of palay by local and national governments through a minimum floor price, that's 100, EO 100, and direct full implementation of the Sagip Saka Act, which is EO 101. And that's why ASEC Joycel Panlilio is here. She is the head of the Sagip Saka desk or Sagip Saka office under the Department of Agriculture. So with the DepEd, with the DSWD, with the DA, all coming together to provide nutritious, healthy food for our children is important. If I may stress, and I also mentioned this to Secretary Rex, and that's why DA is also critical, is because yes, we may, the law is there, but my experience when I was in the private sector organizing our farmers and fisher folk is that the capacity of our farmers to be able to provide the supply is how do you call it, is a major challenge. The weakest link actually in this food supply chain is not the market, it's not logistics, it's not how do you call it, the local governments or the national government entities involved in the supply chain, but it's really the farmers and the fisher folk. So you may have about 14 billion pesos worth of food purchases, but if the farmers and the fisher folk are not capacitated, then the supply will be inconsistent. And the bulk, again, will go to traders who are able to provide consistency in supply. And so the DA will really have to step up. And just for the information, and that's why we will seek the support of Senator Bam here, the twin bills that we are also going to be sponsoring before the end of the year would be the extension service renationalization for the Department of Agriculture and the return or re-establishment of the Bureau of Agriculture Co-ops to be under the Department of Agriculture, amending the CDA law as well as among others. No? So, yun lang. For purposes of moving forward, we hope a capacitated farmer and fisher folk sector will be able to supply all, most, if not all, of the requirements sa local level. That is what we envision with this proposed measure. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Senator Kiko. So just to remind everyone, no, we're going to focus on the first 1,000 days and the 0 to 5 feeding program. No, we'll ask EDCOM to give a brief presentation just to share with everyone the research that they've done on this. Then we'll ask DSWD. Of course, SecRex can choose whoever he wants to present. ECCD. Who will be presenting for ECCD? Yes, Mr. Sabalsa. And then DILG. Is that Attorney Sala? Yes. Sige, let's keep the presentations brief so we can have an open discussion. Si ASEC Roger can just jump in kung ano. May kinalaman po ba ngayon ng DepEd dun sa first 1,000 tsaka 0 to 5? Wala, no? Wala, no? It's really a handoff to you. Okay, so maybe later as a resource person, you can also speak, ASEC Roger. No? Sige po, let's start with ED Carol.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bam, Senator Kiko, thank you for your leadership of this very critical measure. We've been talking about this in EDCOM since year one, and talagang unang-una siya sa lahat ng list ng priorities. And so we are grateful for your support in having this emergency hearing to really clarify. Per your instructions, we actually had a meeting with the agencies last week to align with DOH and DSWD as to what programs are happening. We also invited ECCD Council and DILG, and some of the things we will share will focus on that. Next slide. As was rightfully put by our chairperson, nutrition is an education issue. However, our investments are not strategic, with most of our resources in school-based feeding program, where often it is too late because stunting when they reach grade 5, grade 6, kinder, is irreversible. The damage to cognitive development has already happened, and we can no longer reverse it. Meanwhile, nutrition in the earliest years remain unattended, literally and figuratively, and we will explain why. Next slide. Just to walk you through the first 1,000 days law, we've highlighted, based on our discussions, our technical meeting with the agencies, the red highlighted ones are those that we are not sure who is actually doing. Provision of continuous support to mothers and infants for exclusive breastfeeding, counseling for household members. Yung provision of appropriate and timely immunization services is fully taken on by DOH. Actually, the bulk of their resources for child health goes to immunization. For the rest, question mark pa po. This is particularly for nutrition as well as for oral health. Next slide. We would like to highlight specifically 6 and 8, identification and management of moderate or severe acute malnutrition and provision of lactation management services as well as other medical conditions contributing to malnutrition. And number 8, social welfare support to improve access to health and nutrition services for newborns belonging to poorest of the poor families. Ito po, sa pag-uusap namin, hindi malinaw sa trabaho ng DOH, sa pinupondohan nila, anong ginagawa sa number 6 at number 8 in particular. Yung NNC, may sarili po siyang initiative, pero whether it connects to what DOH plans, does, and budgets for is a question mark. And we also know that DSWD has initiated critical reforms that are actually very important to addressing these challenges. But overall, we see that there is really lack of coordination across the agencies, particularly because it is NNC's mandate to make sure that there is strategic use of resources, strategic targeting of newborns as well as nutritionally at-risk pregnant mothers. It is not happening now. Next slide. Malinaw din po, pagkatapos po ng 0 to 6 months, yung infants 6 months to 2 years of age, uulitin po, yung highlight dito is number 3, dietary supplementation of age-appropriate and nutrient-dense quality complementary food. Ito po, tinatanong namin sa mga agencies na kausap namin, so sinong nagpopondo? Wala po yata. Ang assumption ng DOH in our meeting is that this is funded fully by the LGUs. When we asked, how do you monitor? How do you make sure LGUs are funding it? Ire-request pa daw po yung data mula sa DILG but they don't have it. They have not checked it. The assumptions were not based on whatever data they may have gotten from DILG. Next slide. Ito po ang ginagampanan ng DOH but in a minimal way. The provision of oral health services including application of fluoride varnish. Pero maliit lang din po yung pondo nito. Next slide. Next slide. Ito po yung pondo ng DOH based on our discussion last week. Sa 10.18 billion sa PAP nila for child health, the bulk of it goes to immunization program, 977 million for nutritional programs to augment LGUs that need it, pero based po ito on available resources, not based on which LGUs might need it, based because they are low income, etc., or based on prevalence of stunting. And then oral health is 692 million. The DOH budget also includes 63.9 million for micronutrient supplementation for only 118,000 beneficiaries. The universe of beneficiaries is 2.2 million, yung mga buntis na ina. Ang budget po nila sa 2026 net is 10.24 billion. Bahagya pong umakyat, hindi po dumadagdag, lalong-lalo na sa nutritional programs, kahit na ito po ang pondo na talagang maglalaan susuporta sa first 1,000 days. So malaki po talaga yung agwat sa realidad, sa aspiration ng batas, at sa allocation at ginagawang coordination ngayon sa pagitan ng mga ahensya. Next slide. Ito po ang nakalagay sa batas. The DOH, in coordination with the NNC, the DA, and the LGUs and other agencies concerned, shall be responsible for the implementation of this act. Under Section 8, the LGUs, NGAs, concerned CSOs shall work together to ensure the delivery of these services and interventions. So ang tanong po, based on Section 7 and Section 8, whose role is it talaga ba to ensure the provision of these services and supports? Because lahat po sila nakapangalan, si DOH nandyan, pero sila din po ay devolved, pero chair din sila ng NNC. So talagang medyo may kailangan pong linisin dito in terms of actually delineation of responsibilities. Next slide. Malinaw din po sa batas na first 1,000 days law, the role of NNC, member agencies, other NGAs and LGUs, jointly they shall provide additional resources in any form, including technical assistance, sourced from its budget, in support of local nutrition programs. Pero ang header po, role of NNC member agencies and other NGAs and LGUs. So who will provide additional resources? Who will propose for it? Who will actually give the resources? Whose role is it to provide these services, propose for these funds, and monitor quality of implementation? Question mark din po. And so, hindi po kagulat-gulat, nandito po tayo ngayon, talagang napakaraming gray areas ng implementation. Next slide. Meanwhile, on their own, the National Nutrition Council, typically a policy-making body that is able to rationalize and improve the strategy and coordination of nutrition interventions, have put forward and implemented their own program. Kasi nga daw po, hindi sila sigurado kung may ginagawa yung NGAs. So gumawa sila ng sarili nila. And what you see here, from 2020 up to 2024, is really an effort, but really not even hitting close to what we need. The beneficiaries ranged from 10,000 to at most 30,000 pregnant women. The universe is 2.2 million. The budget they've allocated is from 100 million to at most 208 million. To be honest, Mr. Chairs, in the last 3 years of EDCOM, we have been fighting and advocating, requesting continuously for additional budget for Tutok Kainan kasi yun na nga lang yung existing for nutritionally at-risk pregnant mothers. Although hindi pa malinaw kasi may pag-uusap between the agencies, bakit ba nag-i-implement ang NNC when they should be coordinating programs. So ang question namin, kung hindi gagawin ng NNC, sino ba dapat talaga ang gumawa ng programa for nutritionally at-risk pregnant mothers? It is still a question we have posed to DOH and NNC, and sabi nila mag-uusap sila after our meeting last week.
Sige, I'm gonna break my own rule and stop you here for a second. So meron tayong goal, currently nakaatas siya kay DOH, but then DOH is not set up to be able to go to the barangays, right? Ang alam kong kayang gawin yan are the LGUs and of course DILGs here and DSWD, right? So maybe that's really the first question because if we need to amend that provision for the first 1,000 days and kunyari, put it instead of DOH under DSWD, that might make the confusion less. No, I don't know, no, but you're just pointing out that this huge mandate, hindi klaro kung sinong gagawa. Or yung inatasang gagawa, wala naman kakayanan na gawin ito. And we end up with pilot programs like this na 2 million yung dapat maabot, pero 20,000 lang yung naaabot. That's basically what you're saying, right? No?
Yes, sir.
Was there a recommendation? Of course, we will ask the secretary, of course. But was there a recommendation from the EDCOM side on who should be really on top of the 0 to 5? So first 1,000 is 0 to 2, di ba? Tama ba?
Yes, sir. 0 to 2.
Tapos may bridging ka pa na 2 to 5.
Yes, sir.
No? The recommendation of EDCOM, who should be on top of this? Kasi we know school-based feeding, it's DepEd, di ba? Klarong-klaro. And we're funding them. They've got the infrastructure. May mga tweaks lang with the milk program and kung hot meal ba ito, LGU ba ito, or Nutriban ba to, but more or less, they've got it, they've got an idea on what to do. Tama, no, Asik Roger? Pero dito sa 0 to 5, parang pinaka-basic eh. Sinong gagawa, right? Hindi pa talaga natin natutukoy, no? Or on the ground, di pa talaga siya ganun kalinaw. What's EDCOM's recommendation?
Sir, so far in the last 3 years of meetings with DOH, actually there was a sit-down already with Sec. Herbosa to ask about it. The discussion was that DOH will fully take on its responsibility as chair of the NNC, and apart from ensuring that there is coordination across nutrition interventions in the first 1,000 days, actually umabot pa nga sa presidente and doon pa, focus on this, really take it on. And then that DOH will also build its capacity in terms of coordinating with LGUs kasi hindi naman nila kailangan pondohan lahat, supportahan lahat. Pero dapat mag-coordinate sila with DILG, mag-identify kung sino yung pinaka-nangangailangan ng tulong at doon magbigay ng suporta, technical or resource-wise. Doon po yung pagkukulang kasi after that commitment, we have not seen real significant progress from the side of DOH because when we were asking in the meeting last week, talagang iba-ibang opisina, hindi nagko-coordinate, tapos they didn't have a full view of the targets for nutrition for the first 1,000 days.
Okay, we'll have Secretary Rex. Maybe as a happier update about where we are.
Mr. Chairman, si Kyle, school, we went to the same school, so we have the same passion in trying to do good because yan ang sabi sa amin sa Savior. I just had to jump in. I have a structured presentation actually about the different programs, but I'm not sure kasi if si Carol was updated by DOH on one program that actually addresses all of that. It's called the Philippine Multisectoral Nutrition Program, PMNP for short. It's an ODA that was packaged by the last administration, but they never rolled it out. This administration rolled it out. PMNP is the dance between nutrition specific and nutrition sensitive. A lot of people kasi think just by feeding the child over and over again, that should solve malnutrition. But experts will say that in trying to solve malnutrition, you have to do two things. Invest in nutrition sensitive. This is the overall well-being, the community, making sure there's wash facility, making sure there's ECCD centers, and then nutrition specific. Yan yung direct, you're feeding them. So meaning, ang mas madali is you feed them, hopefully they won't be stunted or they won't be malnourished. But how to keep them that way is the nutrition sensitive. Kasi even if you pump prime them with so much food, and they're no longer malnourished, pero pag uwi nila, there's no access to clean water, diarrhea takes place, babalik lang tayo sa original. Same goes with the mothers. Now, if I can pull up lang the PMNP slide. Ito. Okay.
Go ahead, Secretary, please.
Can we pull this up?
Sorry. Carol, more or less tapos na naman yung presentation mo, di ba?
Just final points on the DSWD supplementary feeding program.
Oh, sige, we'll have the Secretary
Sure,
speak
sir.
first,
Yes,
then we'll get back to you. Or do you want him to finish first?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead
sorry
and finish.
to jump in lang, yeah.
Sige. If we could please put back the slide. Mr. Chair, just to very quickly discuss, under RA 11037, yung masustansyang pagkain para sa bawat batang Pilipino indicates that the supplementary feeding program shall cover undernourished children with ages 3 to 5 years and shall be administered in a daycare center or in any other facility which can be used for the purpose, including at least one fortified meal for no less than 120 days a year. Based on the 2024, can we please put the slide back? Based on the 2024 census, there are about 6.67 million 2 to 4-year-old children. There are about 373.
Sorry, just to say, no, mali na kaagad kasi si first 1,000 days is 0 to 2
Apa.
and the bill says 3 to 5.
Yes po.
So
Apa.
si 2 to 3 technically
Talagang-
may
Yes
of course
po.
we're implementing it properly on the ground, but
Yes.
legislatively that's like one of the first amendments we need to do,
Yes,
no?
sir.
So
Yes,
we'll
sir.
take note of that.
Yes, sir. And SecRex, they've been reaching out to these children under the SNP, but it would be good to just also address it in terms of the amendatory legislation. There are 373,000 approximately who suffer from wasting out of the 6.67 million. However, in 2024, yung naabot po natin na malnourished children through the SFP is 159,000. This means this equates to just 43% of the universe of undernourished children in that age group. This means that about 213,000 are still unable to receive the intervention. This goes into the challenge of logistics, no? Kasi wala po sila sa daycare, kasi mababa yung participation sa early childhood. How do you reach the bulk, more than half of the undernourished children for 2 to 4? When we tried to compute it, because this was also the manifestation yesterday of Senator Alan, who is also our EDCOM commissioner, and also as was articulated by Senator Joel, in our computation, it requires about an additional 961.7 million for a 180-day feeding cycle at 25 pesos per meal to at least resource the remaining 50+% of children who are undernourished for 2 to 5. Of course, in our meeting, sir, with DSWD, I'm not sure if you were updated by the representatives, sabi nila, kaya naman namin sa DSWD yan kasi makikipagtulungan lang kami sa mga BNS, kayang i-reach out yung mga batang yan. Kasi we asked, is there absorptive capacity? Yes daw po, but of course we would like to hear from Secretary Rex himself if this is doable. This is still at 25 pesos per meal. Mr. Chair, if you remember last hearing, we mentioned na nag-increase na yung per capita cost of the feeding from what used to be 15 pesos naging 25 pesos. But in our meeting with the representatives from DSWD, sinabi nila it came with the cost pala na nung tinaas yung per capita, binawasan yung target beneficiaries, which we didn't realize happened. happened. And so we would also like to maybe see clarification if that really occurred. According to DSWD, they've also been fighting for a higher budget than 25 pesos because 25 pesos daw was insufficient. But they've been on hold in DepDev because they've been asking for a rigorous study for how much it might actually cost. And dahil daw doon, tenga pa rin sila kahit ang request nila was 27 pesos. So just to put it out there, we have still more than 50% of undernourished children not receiving the resource. Nag-increase po yung per capita pero kulang pa din ito at nakabinbin pa daw sa DepDev yung per capita cost na ideal. And third, kailangan talaga siyang hanapan ng paraan para ma-reach po yung undernourished na 2 to 5. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Carol. Go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, so
I'm sure you
Mr.
can
Chairman,
address some of these concerns.
yeah, in the course of it. So can we pull up the first slide? There's a technical. Okay. All right. So the first slide after the cover page will actually show you the supplemental feeding program progression. Carol is correct in saying that over the years, the parang I'll put it politely, nilagyan lang ng pondo para masabing may feeding pero sa totoo lang insufficient siya. When I joined the department in 2023, it was at 17 pesos per unit cost. So what can you really buy with 17 pesos? But thankfully, it was moved to 22 pesos and then 25 pesos for this year. But it came at a cost, correct? The number of beneficiaries declined. But we're very thankful to the Senate and Congress now. They took cognizance of that and they actually added the unit cost stays at 25 pesos. But the number of targets is now at 1.8. So bumalik ho tayo to near 2 million. And at the same time, the number of days has also been increased. So that one off the bat will be low-lying fruits that you've already addressed.
Quickly lang, Secretary, what is the max? What is the max? Kung 1.8 yung target natin, what's the max?
That's the universal already,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Kasi we all know na, again, that's another issue. Mababa yung uptake ng kids going to ECCD centers. So this is actually the max.
So this is the max of the kids who go to the
yes.
ECCD. When we say ECCD center, that's the daycare center,
Yes,
no?
and to
Okay.
include the supervised neighborhood play sessions, which is
Okay.
quite loose actually.
So that number is the max that we can reach because of logistics, correct? Because
No,
of our structure.
They're the ones who are enrolled.
Yes. But meron pa yung hindi enrolled, right?
Marami hong hindi enrolled.
What may I know, is that
From my understanding sa EDCOM, as much as around only 30% ang uptake ng people joining, getting their kids in ECCD.
so there's 70% out there that we need to reach.
Yes.
And as
And-
you grow every year and you reach more people, because that's the goal, di ba? We should be funding this more also.
Mr. Chairman, in the next slides, we'll show you what we've been doing. But I'll just dance on the EDCOM report. One of the EDCOM findings there was the incentivizing of behaviors. Diba? The 4Ps actually is trying to address that. Remember, in the 4Ps, the education grant starts with daycare centers. So, and in the family development session, it's being drilled over and over again, the value of education. But yeah, there are challenges. Siguro sa utak nila, sa isipan nila, daycare lang yan, baka sa kinder na ako ulit papasok. And there's a lot of work to be done in terms of making them appreciate the value of enrolling their kids in a daycare center. Now, the next slide, this is sort of jumping the present, putting the cart ahead of the horse. We made a scale of where we believe the investments has to be made. For 2 to 5, yes, the return on investment is quite high. But not as high as if we plow in our money in the 0 to 2. Tama, no? 0 to 2. So from yan yung pregnant and lactating women. I don't want to keep on repeating it, but this is the most critical period where rapid development in the child's brain and physical capacities takes place. Now, without sounding offensive with my seatmate from DepEd, the return on investment late in 5 onwards is medium. And I'm sure EDCOM will corroborate what I'm saying. So just off the bat, if from our point of view, and you cannot blame us for championing this, if there is limited resources, we would say to invest it we would invest it sa front load it rather than post it. Kasi parang the way I'm looking at it, it's always trying to, and I'm not saying it's not a good idea to increase the days or increase the number of coverage 2 to 5 as well as 5 to above. But if we only had limited resources, shouldn't we be putting it in where the highest rate of return will be, which is the 0 to 5, 0 to 2, which is what we're talking about here.
Well, we should, Secretary. That's why we're having this hearing.
Yes.
Kasi ang laki ng tinaas ng budget for the school feeding program because we're all advocating for that. And then, na-raise nga na we might not be funding enough yung 0 to 2 tsaka 2 to 5. However, I think we can fund it up to absorptive capacity. Meaning, let's fund 100% of the kids that you can reach. And I think we're almost there, di ba? With,
Chairman,
with what you presented.
I'll run through the presentation and show you where we think we can put in more investment in 0 to 2. So again, this is a pro DSWD slide more than anything.
Sorry, when we say 0 to 2, we include -9. No? I mean, meaning...
Yeah, from pregnant and lactating women.
So 0 is at the time of pregnancy.
Yes.
diba? Okay.
Quick clarification, Secretary. Di ba sa first 1,000 days law, si DOH yung nakatoka dyan? But it's really you guys, di ba? Who are doing it.
Yun yung kaninang kinikwento ko, yung nutrition sensitive, nutrition specific. It's part of the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I'll just go through it briefly. Then we can have a more interactive discussion. Now, the next slide. If we can flip to the next slide. Yes. So, this is a rough number. Ano to? Yung sa 4Ps, diba? Now, Mr. Chairman, you asked us on absorptive capacity, how do we reach those who are not enrolling? 0 to 2 kasi yan eh. Wala pa sila sa daycare. Our intervention starts, SFP, supplemental feeding starts, it's a facility-based intervention. But like ang point of argument ko is, dapat before they get there, we invest in them. So one of the interventions we did was based on the EDCOM report, na we have to keep on investing in them by creating positive behavioral change in our pregnant and lactating women, especially the lowest income pregnant and lactating women. So we introduced the first 1,000-day grant. I think Senator Pia, when she was sponsoring this yesterday, our budget yesterday, she mentioned this. It's a new grant. I was launched in 2025, and then we were able to target, ang physical target niya, 139,000 from our database. But obviously it moves kasi what happens is when you reach 2, you get out of this type of grant. You stay in the program with a different grant, the standard education grant, the standard health grant. Then we find more pregnant and lactating women or those that have 0 to 2 na anak. So our physical accomplishment just by this year alone is at 192,000. So that's way above the target. It's a moving target eh, kasi whenever somebody gets pregnant, they register, they say, okay, I'm entitled to this grant. And then when their kid hits 2, beyond 2 years and 1 day, they exit this type of grant. So it's a revolving type of grant. So at least I can tell you that we're trying to do something to induce positive behavioral change in our low-income families who have pregnant and lactating women and with kids 0 to 2. So this is the first type of intervention we've done. So the SFP, the supplemental feeding program, is institution-based. But how do we run after those that are not in institution or in facilities? So we use an existing program, the 4Ps, and introduce a sub-grant there. It used to be just health and education grant and that rice subsidy. So this is a derivative of the health grant. Now, yesterday there were a lot of talks as to bakit 350 pesos lang ang binibigay. In fact, Senator Pia was telling me, kulang na kulang yon. One, we were batting for a higher price tag to it, but DepDev computed it and somehow came back to us and said hanggang dito lang dapat. But what we are pushing for, because Senator Pia told us yesterday to please submit an amendment, is we're pushing for 750 pesos, 50 pesos below the health grant, the standard health grant. It's the same. Then we ran the figures using what we have from historic data. We would need around 900 million in additional 4-piece grants. And we've written the committee yesterday. Actually, it's one of our talking points ng chairman ng finance committee kasi he keeps on talking about excess funds in the 4Ps when I keep on telling him there are no excess funds. And this is another argument to it that whatever grants there are, we can maximize it by plowing it into this type of grant, the first 1,000-day grant. It's what I'm trying to say is the program's there. The capacity is there. We have city links and municipal links, 14,000 of them spread across the country, case managing them. So we just have to encourage behavioral change, which was EDCOM's finding. Now we're not maximizing the 4Ps in terms of educating our first 1,000-day beneficiaries.
Question, Secretary. So, 192,000, yan yung accomplishment ninyo. Is the limit the funding? Or
No,
that's everyone? Is that, kasi parang ang konti niya.
konti siya.
Oo.
Because we found that there are now amendments to the 4Ps law that we're pushing. Our 4Ps families are aging. They're in the older set. Kasi some of them, this is another discussion, but in a nutshell, there were the exit mechanisms in the design wasn't implemented for the longest time. In fact, prior to 2022, ang na-exit lang since inception was 50,000. So you can imagine they're getting older, so their kids are older, and the women in the program's older. But since we joined the administration, the president's instruction was to make sure that we case manage aggressively and we exit those that we can exit because their economic well-being has already improved. So from 2022 till now, we've already managed to exit 1.4 million. So you can imagine 50,000 versus 1.4 in the span of 3 years. It's just because we're aggressive with the case management.
So that's within the 4Ps program.
Yeah.
But
So
the universe of mothers and 0 to 24.
We have a rough estimate.
Ay, okay.
But the reason why I keep on you mentioned bakit ang konti nila kasi nag-age na yung 4Ps families natin. But with all are exiting and we reintroduce new families into the program, new low-income families into the program using CBMS. Hopefully they have that data. We can probably bring those numbers up kasi younger set of families na meron. Kasi some of our families have been in the program for 17 years. So you can imagine the age nila. So we're now exiting a lot of them and hopefully getting in new families with younger children or younger mothers. So that's why mukhang maliit tong numero. Now, moving on to so this is the first intervention. So the first intervention was facility-based. We're thankful for Congress and the Senate taking cognizance of adding budget to the supplemental feeding. Pero ang tanong, paano yun sa komunidad? If my argument is, wag sa facility antayin prior to the institution hanapin, first is the first 1,000-day grant of 4Ps. The ask there is, sana mapagbigyan yung 900 million na hinihingi naming additional so that we can increase the grant and hopefully, more pregnant and lactating mothers with children 0 to 2 will say, okay, I want to sign up. Kasi for 350 pesos, baka hindi enough incentive for them to come out in the open. The 350 was really meant to defray the cost of going to health centers, so and so forth. So now, hopefully, if we suddenly say na, 750 pesos na to, baka marami pa doon sa universe ng 4Ps ang magparehistro.
The 750 covers what?
The 750 peso covers the defraying the cost and going to the centers, seeking post and prenatal care, and some portions of their nutrition specific, the food that they will provide.
Frequency of the 750.
That's monthly based on compliance, but we pay it out.
Monthly.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So the next slide is the. Can we move on to the next slide? So this is the second slide, the second program, what I was mentioning, yung Philippine Multisectoral Nutrition Program. Kanina kasi there's a question, ano ang role ng DSWD, anong role ng DOH? In this innovative program that they packaged in the last administration, they defined it clearly. To end stunting, you have to do these two things. And yan nandyan yung listahan ng mga what's a nutrition specific and what's a nutrition sensitive. DOH was tasked to run the nutrition specific, while social welfare was tasked to run nutrition sensitive. I keep on saying this is a dance between the two components. One cannot survive without the other. We cannot end stunting by just purely investing in nutrition specific. We have to make sure that the children stays that way by investing in the total environment. So just to give you an idea, the loan package or the ODA for this one is ano yung total? 4 billion went to DSWD, 7.76 billion went to DOH. The entire package is at 11.82. Now sa DSWD, tapos na ho kami dito. These are yung I know you know the term, yung Kalahi Seeds. The same platform, community-driven development. The community will identify ano bang kailangan natin dito. So a lot of some projects are wash facilities, some are establishing daycare centers. So our component is fully obligated, fully executed. Unfortunately, dun sa DOH side, nagkakaroon ng konting procurement issues. You might, siguro DOH can elaborate. But I think that answers what Carol was saying a while ago na DOH doesn't seem to know its role, but with this program, they're supposed to know their role. Their role is the nutrition specific. Our role is the nutrition sensitive. Obviously, they cannot venture into nutrition sensitive because yan yung mga beyond them. Nasa amin talaga yan. Kasi the question kept on arising, ano ang role ng DOH? Ano ang role ng NCC? Ano ang role ng DSWD?
Secretary, in your ECCD ba is DOH? DOH ba kayo? No, no. Sino bang DOH dito? NNC. Like DOH, I don't think has the infrastructure for feeding programs. Diba? Reproductive health services, antenatal, postnatal care. I guess kaya yon kasi you would go to a hospital or a center, acute. But the biggest chunk here, which is the feeding program, I don't think DOH can do that, no?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the loan design, there were 3 components to it. That feeding wasn't part of it.
Okay.
It was improving health systems. Kasi even in the EDCOM design, a lot of our local government units, yung mga barangay nutrition workers, don't know their role. Yung nutrition scholars, they don't know their role. So, the component 1 ng DOH was about improving health capacities within the LGUs, teaching them what to do because it's the LGU's primary responsibility. I was a mayor once, so I understand this. Halimbawa, a lot of the LGUs didn't know what a nutrition action plan was. As simple as that. They were cutting and pasting it based on the findings of the World Bank. Meaning, templated na, if you fill in the blanks na lang nila. But those nutrition action plans are important because nandun yung basic data of what you need to do. So the whole component 1 was trying to improve health systems through DOH. Tapos, meron rin ho dyan performance-based incentives. So DOH was capacitated to encourage BHWs to do the tracking and they get incentives along the way. So component 1 was improving health systems, nutrition specific pa rin yan. Number 2, kami yung nutrition sensitive. There was a third component which we kept on pushing, which was the IT tracking system. The biggest problem is we're not tracking down our kids. What happens is, 0 to 2, health center Q card. Pagtapos nun, pasa sa amin, we don't know what their history is. Pagtapos nun, papasa ko sa DepEd, hindi rin nila amin history. But for the first time in this country's life, we have a system that actually tracks it down. And DOH has the template already. Now, if we move on to the next slide, this was what Senator Cayetano was talking about yesterday. I will send it to him. PMNP ran in 235 LGUs only. They identified the 235 as the ones with the highest stunting rates. 235. Now, why are we showing you a bigger number? Because in the design, BARM was not included. The concept of the loan was BARM will only get technical assistance, pero wala silang actual implementation. So, why am I showing this? This is what Senator Cayetano kept on saying yesterday. We work on the poorest or the most stunted, then we lift the national averages. Kasi if we have limited resources, then let's just focus on these LGUs. Now, from our run, it's 404, no? 580. That includes the BARM LGUs already. Now, I cannot keep on repeating. This program actually saw what Carol was saying, that nobody's taking ownership. It sort of put structure on what should be done. Now, World Bank is quite happy with it. They're now pushing for additional financing for it to keep on investing in these poor LGUs, or most stunted LGUs. But the new design calls for adding BARM into the picture. Kasi BARM, as we know, has the highest prevalence of stunting rates in some of their LGUs. The original design kasi technical assistance lang sila. There was no real implementation of the program. The rationale then was they have their own block grants, let them get it from their block grants. But I think doing the same thing over and over again will yield the same results as what was said yesterday.
Just to clarify, earlier you were saying that for the 4 billion that you have, you're fully
We're
obligated.
done. Yes.
The challenge is the 7 billion with the DOH, which we're saying there are,
But they're getting there, Mr. Senator.
yes, but one area, and as you put it, is which was being raised earlier by Senator Bam, is who actually does the feeding programs. So in this particular nutrition-specific direct interventions of the DOH, it's the local governments, and that's why you have 580 LGUs, meaning that component of the program is where the training is required, the guidance and direction setting of the DOH will then be effectively implemented. In other words, in this program, your foot soldiers are your LGUs.
Correct, Mr.
Okay.
Senator.
Okay, understood.
Even in DSWD, we don't have foot soldiers. Social welfare is also devolved. That's why may mga MSWDO, CSWDO. We're pretty much set up the same way that DOH is set up. We set the standards, we regulate them, but when it comes to implementation, it's the same. So, the first one was SFP, the second one was the first 1,000-day grant, and the third program is the Philippine Multisectoral Nutrition Program. It's really worth looking into kasi nandyan na ho siya eh. And the groundworks have been laid.
Yeah. Secretary, I want to take a step back now. So these are programs we've applied for, we're currently doing, but parang for me kasi the fact na may handoff ka from 0 to 2, ibang ahensya, 2 to 5, ibang ahensya, 5 and up, ibang ahensya, parang it makes it difficult, di ba? If we had a chance to, take a step back and say, who's in the best position to solve the problem? What's the best structure? What's the right funding para maabot natin siya? Kasi the bill can serve as that reset, di ba? If we need to reconfigure sino bang on top of this. Kasi lumalabas talaga, I mean, multiple senators yesterday talked about the problem of stunting. It's the first page in the EDCOM report, basically, first chapter. Is it working itong DOH handoff to DSWD, handoff to DepEd? Is it working or magulo, 'di ba? Ako for me naguguluhan na ako just listening to it, no.
Actually, magulo ho siya. That's correct. That's why we were trying to put in some type of overarching tool, which was that system. And
Yes, but it doesn't
Now-
kasi address the exact accountability, 'di ba, na no, meaning if we could reset it, like for example, would you be amenable to amending the first 1,000 days instead of DOH? Lagay natin DSWD.
Mr. Chairman, yesterday si Senator Alan Cayetano kept on repeating that, and he has a
Oh,
point.
he did also?
Yeah, he
Same
pointed
point?
out
Okay.
na dapat may task force, may isang point person. In fact, I think si Carol knows this. Early on, after we met the President, si Secretary Balisacan, who is very concerned with the stunting rates, was actually proposing to put all the 3 departments or whoever's handling it in one team with a czar on top. The reason why ganun yung setup, because like I said, the nutrition sensitive, I don't think DOH can embark on that. Talagang the competencies of the complex problem of malnutrition or stunting really requires multiple departments. But holding them together is something where we're open in. I mean, we're open to reporting to somebody for dysfunction.
Why not they report to you for this function?
I
And of
think-
course you report to the president. No?
Senator Cayetano has also said that so many times. But I have to also admit where our department's limitations are. Malaki kasi yung taya talaga dun sa health component of it. For instance, again, I keep on referring back to EDCOM because they've done it so many times. When I joined the department, there was even an argument on how we measure the kids. The baseline lang nga, hindi tayo magkasundo-sundo. MUAC ba yan? NCC's here. And I remember their old executive director, the former executive director, and I had so much arguments kasi hindi na nila alam kung paano
But
susukatin.
that's why kapag may czar na, the czar or the head of the task force, or if it's under DSWD, you determine the metrics and you determine, di ba? And you determine for me, Secretary, simple lang who can reach the kids. The way that DOH is set up, I don't think they can reach the kids Di ba? They've got their hospitals, they've got the super health centers, pero yung ganung kababad, and please correct me if I'm wrong and I haven't been here for 6 years, so baka nagbago na rin yung mga structures. Parang my understanding is that it's either you or DILG who has and DILG still has to work through the LGUs, di ba? But if you're running the daycare centers, correct, di ba?
No, it's ECCD.
ECCD, which is under
Only the fee.
DILG. So so ako ang suggestion ko, let's use the bill as an opportunity to reset who's on top. Pag-usapan natin, we can do a TWG maybe of the senior staff. Let's hammer it out. Kasi nalo-lost in translation tayo dito sa problemang ito Is it with this group? Is it with that group? At least nung nagka-EDCOM and si DepEd, nag-focus tayo. That's why suddenly there's so much funding. Because naging klaro kung ano yung accountability, sino yung gagawa, at sino yung nakataya. So, dito sa 0 to 5, I suggest we really figure out what's the best structure, who's in the best position to do it, and then from there, we look at capacity and funding, no?
Mr. Chairman, I concur na dapat meron talagang timon, may team captain. But kung DSWD yan, parang malabo yan. Kasi,
Really? Okay.
Again, these are health metrics and we don't have that technical know-how. Neither do we have nutritionists, but when it comes to NCC, NC probably has more know-how
So,
on that.
NNC is with DOH, right?
Yeah.
Di ba? And
As-
ECCD is with DILG. And then you also, attached, but I mean
Actually-
yung pataas niya, di ba? So that's 3 agencies kaagad, no?
Chairman, honestly, nagugulat tong dalawang USEC na katabi ko. Hindi ko rin nga alam ba't nasa amin yung feeding ng daycare Gusto na ho nga namin sabihin sa kanila na lang But bottom line lang, ang pagkakaintindi ko ng konteksto is they don't have the capacities to download funds to do the payouts. And sa totoo lang, that's an oddball out. Originally nasa amin yung ECCD. But they took the ECCD, but they left the feeding component, which I don't
Why?
get why. Apparently, I was told the context of it is hindi kaya ng ECCD to do the functions. Kasi it's quite tedious to obligate the funds, to talk to the LGU, to register the kids, to monitor that. But kami, for the record, and I think the USEC in charge will agree, I would rather focus on our competency, the nutrition sensitive. Kanila na yung feeding, kami will just do the wash facilities, what we know how to do, what we do best, the community-driven development. Let us focus on that. That's 1. 2, yes, they will not be able to reach the kids. Neither can we kasi devolve ang social welfare, but we have tools like the 4Ps. Nandyan in struktura, we can somehow tweak it a bit to reach those na wala pa sa facilities. For the record, it's confusing. I agree.
Yung barangay-based, lahat ng 0 to 5 can get their supplements here or their food here, which is the idea, di ba? You're saying you're not set up for that.
I don't think anybody's set up for that. I'll give you my prior life experience when I was a mayor. We saw this already in Valenzuela. What happened was we ran one of the biggest and most robust feeding programs there was. It was ahead of its time. We were feeding 15,000 kids at any given time. And ako yung mayor nun, hindi si Sherwin. Just for the record. No, I'm just joking. He set it up. I expanded it, but he set it up. I just had to put that in the record. Wala naman ho siya. We were working with ASED then, Ateneum, and we would see na over summer, pag napakawalan namin yung mga bata, bumabalik. By the time we weigh them in the next school year, we're back to wasted and severely wasted. The DepEd knows that. So we tried to figure out how we can do the community feeding. We set up parang lunch boxes where they would get their meals sa mga health centers namin, but it didn't work after a while because we were talking about migrant workers. They were moving around. So sometimes sa Valenzuela sila, mag-endo, bukas na sa Caloocan na sila, so hindi na nila kukunin yung pagkain nila. So reaching them in the community is the hardest part, and I believe it's only the LGUs that can do that. 9 of the NGAs, I mean, I don't want to speak for the 2 NGAs here, but kami sa DSWD, mahirapan ho kami doon. We don't have the boots on the ground, and neither do we claim that we can do that.
can ask, sorry, Senator Kiko. Then maybe ECCD and DILG can prepare their responses to this, no?
And maybe EDCOM, since they're the ones who said the foundational, it's in your first page of your report. So maybe you should come up with a recommendation as to which agency or which structure, whether it's a food SAR.
Tsaka, Senator, di ba kung ganito to ka importante, we have to build it. Di ba? I mean, ganun lang kasimple yun. If it's that important, we have to figure it out. And maybe this year is not the year we go full blast kasi we're still nangangapa, but we can take the year to do pilots, create systems, and then hope that in 2027, we can have a more full blast type of implementation, di ba? I mean, that could be the response from this meeting or the hearing. But can we ask, we'll ask the ILG, sir, si Mr. Sabalsa or si Attorney Sala to respond, and then later si Carol, no?
Good morning po, Mr. Chair and Senator Pangilinan. So I am Attorney Noel Sala from the ILG Legal Legislative Liaison Services. So the DILG is based on the laws, the first 1,000 days and the masustansyang pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act. The role of the ILG here is mostly on coordination. So the DILG, through the BLGD and the BLGS, coordinate with the LGUs. However, we all know that based on the law, that, for example, the masustansyang pagkain sa Batang Pilipino Act, the DILG is the implementer in the local level as to the supplemental feeding program. So the DILG, through the local social welfare development officers, through the MSWDO, CSWDO, they are the ones implementing the supplemental feeding program. So the LGUs are implementing it through the child development workers. So the LGUs hire child development workers. These child development workers are those who are teaching the learners in the child development centers. So the role of the ILG here, the ILG and the LGUs are very important. So they are the one that are implementing this program. As to the school-based program, we have slides po.
Wag muna yung school-based program kasi that's extensively been discussed already. Let's talk about the community-based program. So, ang sinasabi mo, attorney, you work with the what do you call it again, yung hinahire ninyo? The
Child development workers.
child
po.
development workers. That's per municipality and per city.
Yes po. Per barangay po,
Per
and it's
barangay.
the LGU's responsibility. When I
Okay.
say LGU, it's the city and the municipality's
Kaya
responsibility.
ba nilang mag-implement ng gantong klaseng nutrition program?
They're currently implementing it po.
Okay, through funding of the LGU because the LGUs also
Not
have
through the LGU funding, but through the DSWD po. Kasi dinadagdag ng DSWD yung budget sa MSWDO, and the MSWDOs are the one responsible for implementing it. Sila in coordination with the Parents Teachers Association ng mga child development centers. So doon, yung mga, as far as I know on the ground, yung mga nagluluto doon is from the PTA. So sila yung nagpe-prepare ng yung mga menu
Isn't that for
cycle.
the school-based feeding program kung PTA?
Hindi po, nasa child development workers po, yung sa mga
Okay, so daycare. PTA
daycare
rin for the
workers.
daycare. Okay, so the supplementary feeding program budget is with the SWD.
The supplemental
They fund-
feeding po. Yes, it's with the DSWD
And then they
po.
fund the municipal what do they fund? The MS.
Yeah, we download it to the LGUs, and that's where, Senator Kiko, that's where the community procurement takes place.
Okay, so it's downloaded to the LGU, and then the LGU hires the child development workers, and
Yes
then
po.
they co-manage that with the PTA of the daycare centers.
Yes po.
And is it working?
Yes po, as far as I know, yan po yung practice ngayon sa ground po. So the child development workers are the one that is really the implementers on the ground through the MSWDO, kasi yung child development workers are under the municipal or city MSWDO, Municipal Social Welfare and Development
The
Office.
MSWDO, do they report to the DSWD or they report to the mayor?
Devolve yun.
Devolve
That's why
yun.
I said we were set up like DOH. We supervise them by setting the standards, but the day-to-day administration goes with the LGU.
But I guess similar to the classroom bill that we have na DepEd is downloading to the LGU. LGU will implement, DepEd will monitor.
Yes.
That's a system.
That's when we joined the department. There were struggles na kami nagpo-procure regionally, which was mission impossible. The spoilage, the logistics. So we came up with a policy to download everything as much as we can, and then we monitor na lang based on financial and compliance and the actual implementation.
Okay, if that's already being done, Secretary, and Attorney, sa DILG, okay naman kayo sa sistemang yan, di ba? Or you foresee some problems with that setup?
As mentioned earlier by Secretary Gatchalian, wala silang boots on the ground, so they rely on the LGUs.
Yeah.
And as the ILG the ILG supervises LGUs, and the ILG is very supportive of these programs, yung supplemental feeding, yung school-based feeding, and other feeding programs of the government.
Okay, and in your experience, yung coverage ng MSWDO, di ba? Yung coverage nila, lalaki kung mas malaki yung pondo or may problema na sila with regard to absorptive capacity?
Yung based on my experience po, because I serve as executive assistant to our mayor back then, before joining the ILG. So yung MSWDO, if madadagdagan talaga yung trabaho nila if there's bigger budget. Because yung MSWDO, hindi lang naman kasi yung feeding program yung ginagawa. There's a lot. They are part of the local council for the protection of children, and there's other programs for the children's and social welfare programs for senior citizen under din sa kanila.
Sa tingin ninyo, anong porsyento ng bata na dapat maabot ang naaabot ng current system natin? Naaabot ba lahat ng dapat maabot o hindi?
Yung as for that po, I think the feeding program in the LGUs are operative naman po. It's operating because there's budget from the MSWDO, from the DSWD, and the MSWDO is implementing it. And it is closely coordinating with the Office of the Municipal Mayor for that programs. Meron po kaming update po, Mr. Chair, yung sa...
So yung MSWDO, lahat ng LGU meron yan?
Yes.
Actually
Yes.
po,
Lahat.
yung position ng MSWDO for city and municipality, the social welfare officer, based on the local government code, it's optional.
Yes, optional.
Yes po.
So, ano yung realidad sa baba? Lahat ba ng LGU? Ilang porsyento ng LGU ang merong ganitong meron?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have the figures right now, but we'll send it to you. But ano yan not especially for 4th class, 5th class LGUs, an LSWDO needs to be a registered social worker, which is quite scarce and very expensive. Yeah. So what happens next is they now have what we call social welfare assistants. They're deputized by the mayor to perform those functions. So kami naman, we took cognizance of that. We set the standards, capacitate them to fulfill the functions, but on a limited scale. Kasi for instance, they cannot sign social workers intakes, but yung administrative job na yan, kaya nila yan. Kaya nila yung dispensing with the food and so that, kaya nila yan.
Well, we just want the numbers because, well, sa Department of Agriculture kasi, may mga MAU, Municipal Agriculture Officers, lahat. Pero, hindi capacitated or hindi sufficiente yung support ng LGU kung priority ba niya yung agri o hindi. Kasi kung priority niya, maganda. Kung hindi niya priority, wala. Eh baka ganun din sa feeding programs. Kung hindi priority ni Mayor, wala. Kung priority, meron. So pagka ganun,
tayo.
di ba, magre-rely tayo dun sa baba, pero hindi priority ni Mayor, magkakaroon na naman ng malalaking gaps.
No, well,
So, yeah. Well,
that's where, I think the amendments to the law can really make it mandatory already, no? Kasi kung ganito kalaki yung problema, tama ba, Secretary? And we've all recognized that this is a huge problem. The mandatory nature of this program for the LGUs simply has to be mandatory, di ba?
And DILG can correct me, but it's part of the SGLG requirement. Eh. So meaning it's
Yeah, but
sort of
that's an
mandatory.
incentive. That's
Yes.
an incentive.
Ah.
Kasi the seal of good local house governance is basically an award, correct, 'di ba?
That's indicator.
It's an indicator. Okay. So meaning it's not mandatory. It's one of the indicators. But you can mandate the feeding program. Tama po ba, Attorney Noel? It's not mandated kasi right now, 'di ba? Hindi pa siya mandated.
Yes po.
Like,
Yung
for
position-
example, if we fund the school-based feeding program, it's mandated that they have to run it. No, can we mandate? The law can mandate the feeding
Yes po.
program.
The DILG will just implement the laws that are enacted by the Congress.
May I, for example, well, this is school-based, no? But, kumbaga, it may be not apples to apples, but maybe a similar intervention dun sa non-school-based feeding program. No? Because my understanding is in Japan, every school has a nutritionist. So it's not the teachers who handle the program for nutrition in the schools. It's a nutritionist. So maybe what should be mandated is a nutritionist for every LGU as a requirement, so that will be the the person in charge. And then now, in terms of its connection to the national, I'm not sure, and that's why maybe Dr. Carol can give us what are the international best practices out there, and maybe we can learn from them, diba? Go ahead. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just jump in, I think we're still see the DLG, our friend from DLG, is still referring to the facility-based feeding. I think the facility-based feeding, from my opinion, mas madali siyang gamutin. Kasi it's just about capturing. Tama naman, mababa yung uptake, but the EDCOM has already given us a lot of leads, like pushing our low-income families to make them understand that ECCD is important so that they can go in with all these grants. I think it's in their finding nila Doc Carol na number 2, which was incentivize. That's 4 Ps. Kasi the low-income families is a low-lying fruit. But we have to still go back, yung kanina yung pinoint out na yung community-based, yung 0 to 2. I think the 0 to 2 isn't very clear who is implementing it. Yan yung, I think, takeaway ko from what Carol is saying. The DILG, I think, is jumping into the facility-based pa rin. Kasi dalawa ho, di ba? As the chairman pointed out, meron tayong facility-based, which is the supplemental feeding program, and then this unknown, which is the 0 to 2. And kami, sa DSWD, we just pointed out what we've been doing for the 0 to 2. Like the first 1,000 day grant, the Philippine Multi-Sectoral Program. These are things that we are doing in a community. But like the chairman said, there has to be a bigger, stronger structure for the community base.
Carol?
Sir, just to cite the law, kasi ang nakalagay po kanina, the DOH shall be responsible for the implementation of this act. It shall be implemented at the barangay level through the rural health units and or barangay health centers in coordination with the sangguniang barangay. So, I guess the law assumed then that this mechanism would work and enable them to actually fulfill the mandate and deliver the services. Just to highlight, kasi po kanina nabibring up, sino ba yung magtitimon? I think we might need to also address the maybe elephant in the room for some of us, that we need to clarify NNC's mandate. Kasi po, ang NNC, walang isang malinis na batas yan. May presidential decree, may executive order, maraming batas na nagdadagdag na responsibilidad. Para kailangan mong pagdikit-dikitin yung mga yon to understand ano ba talagang role niya. Pero ano po, pag pinagdikit-dikit niyo po yan, what does it say? To formulate an integrated national program on nutrition, to supervise, coordinate, and evaluate the implementation of these programs, to coordinate the release of funds for nutrition programs, to propose funding for LGUs that must be prioritized for supports from the national government, to oversee and serve as a focal point in the integration of nutrition policies and programs of all member agencies. And the member agencies are DOH, DSWD, DepEd, DA, among others.
But what you described, ED Carol, is a policy-making body.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes,
diba?
sir.
And there's no doubt about that
Yes, sir.
you are the policy-making body with regard to nutrition. But Ms. Alpuerto, baka you would like to comment also. Kasi ako, I used to run the National Youth Commission, no? And that was always the That was always the question. Are you an implementer or are you a policy-making body? And during my time there, it was clear to us, it's a policy-making body. You create the youth policy, you work through the agencies. The agencies are the ones who have the capacity to implement. If you're implementing any program, it's a pilot. And maybe you want to learn from it kasi the scale will always be smaller. And then from there, you learn from that. Then that's what you use to share further policies or programs with the bigger agencies for their full implementation. Tama naman po, di ba? Is that also where NNC sees itself? Na policy-making body po tayo?
Yes po. Good morning po, Senators, Senator Bam and Senator Kiko, and everyone here in the members of the committee. Actually, kami po sa NNC ay nalilito na din. kasi palagi na lang pong, kasi may program naman po talaga kami sa Dietary Supplementation Program, yung TK po, na binibigyan naman din po kami ng budget from the government. So, ibig sabihin, kasi binibigyan kami ay mandated din nagagawa ng program namin. Kasi di po ba? Kasi otherwise, hindi kami binibigyan. And then, since 2020, we were implementing the TK with a budget of 90 million plus. Nahanap ko lang yung numbers. And then, until ngayon, 2025, binibigyan pa din po kami ng budget. So, ibig sabihin, we are capable of implementing. However, baba po siya ng pababa. Pero sa PIPAN provinces lang po kasi ito.
Exactly.
Senator.
So,
Yes po.
ang implementation po ninyo is so limited.
Yes.
'Di ba?
We
Ang,
agree.
ang layo po niya dun sa talagang need natin that you would need a DSWD or a
Yes.
DOH or a
Yes.
DILG to implement it.
So-
So the way I see it, no? Kasi again, I was exactly in your position in the National Youth Commission before. Pagdating sa bagay about nutrition, kayo dapat ang nagbibigay ng kaalaman sa aming lahat, 'di ba? About nutrition sa DepEd, sa DSWD at lahat. Pagdating sa mga programa, to normalize the programs, it has to go through the agencies because you will never be able to reach the real number that we need to reach. But through implementing these programs on a smaller scale, you can learn so much and you can share that with the agencies. No? So, para sa akin po, siguro para maging mas malinaw rin, at least kami, kung pumupondo kami, the little funding that we give for small programs is for you to learn and to assess, di ba? But you should really focus on your policy side, which is dapat lahat ng ahensya, especially the ones with the feeding program, they should have the right data and the right information pagdating sa hinahabol nating nutritional values for the children or for our citizens, no? Opo. So ako, I wouldn't worry too much because clearly hindi nyo maaabot yung scale na kailangan nating maabot eh. Tama ba ako, Secretary? The only ones who can reach that are DSWD, DILG, DOH, and DepEd?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, two things. With all due respect to our friends from National Nutrition Council, yung tutok kainan kasi nila, we're quite opposed to it kasi we believe that it's, no, not just that, Mr. Chairman, it's quite degrading. Can you imagine? I told Dayang Hirang dati, ED, di ba? You get all the pregnant women to eat, di ba? First of all, parang it's not empowering. Parang it's a feeding program for pregnant women na sabay-sabay sila kakain. What about those that lives in GIDA areas? You expect them to come every single day to eat? Not only is the scale small, but it's kind of parang, I don't know if the EDCOM study shows this. I remember when I was mayor, the older the child gets, mas nahihiya siya mag-feeding kasi the stigma. So, I remember nung mayor ako, pagdating ng high school, yung wasted namin na konti, ayaw talaga nila pumupunta sa common dining area sa school. Kasi when you get older, you don't want to be seen na sabay-sabay kumakain, di ba? Parang ganun. So, a lot of the development partners of DSWD has always been pushing for cash-based grants. Kasi, one, logistically, it's so hard talaga to bring lunch boxes to everybody. We've been trying to figure out yung home delivery. It's very difficult. Pick it up. It's very difficult. As I mentioned a while ago, people move around. Workers transfer residences. So one of the modality we were looking at is cash-based grants and to empower the family, to empower the pregnant and lactating woman to decide for herself what she needs. That's why nga we came up with that first 1,000-day grant. And I mean no offense to the Tutok Kainan program, but I've been very vocal about it na parang I'm not even sure why we're putting funds to it, if I may dare say so. Kasi parang like you said, they're supposed to make policy, but they're also implementing it, but the implementation is half-baked. That's my personal take on it, and I've been very vocal about it. Mr. Chairman, yung community base kasi, Carol might have the new numbers. Based on a UN study, there's 3.6 million pregnant and lactating women. I'm not sure if the number's correct. That's 3.6. Pati yung non-stunted yan, ah. So let's say a third of that is stunted. 1.2. Can you pull up this slide natin? Yeah, can you So 1.2, no? A third, 1.2. So yun yung global natin for community base na 0 to 2. I'll give you lang what DSWD scale is right now. Can you pull this up? Yes, sir. Course of action. Course of action. The next slide. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, so 1.2, we're looking at roughly 1.2 stunted within the pregnant lactating women. Right now, our Pantawid first 1,000 day grant is at 192,000 already. That's being done. Just increase their grants. Hopefully, we help them. The PMNP, like I mentioned a while ago, operates in 235 of the poorest, most stunted LGUs. The database I mentioned to you a while ago, yung tracker, tumatakbo na ho, we know that there are 395,000 pregnant and lactating women there. Yan, hindi lahat sila stunted, but we're assuming kasi mataas ang stunting rate doon eh. So, and then we have this small program in DSWD that we inherited na we keep on running. It's a community-based feeding program operating in the BARM area. It's a community feeding, sila rin nagluluto, but maliit lang ho yan. So this by itself already is half of what we are looking at. So we're just looking at for the other half. So now if we were talking about low-lying fruits, then my personal opinion is to just keep on investing in this. And then while we're figuring out how to locate the other ones.
Secretary, and you have enough funding naman for this, di ba?
We propose, we're running the Pantawid Pamilya.
Yes.
But we are proposing to increase the grants based on the sponsorship discussions yesterday. We've already submitted the amendment. The PMNP, this is due for additional financing. Mr. Chairman, tapos na yung first round na binanggit ko kanina. So now we're pushing for additional financing.
That's between you and which
DOH.
agency?
DOH.
No, and which international? World Bank. Okay.
Yeah. So meaning, our recommendation is the easier logistical way out. Cash transfers.
Yes. I don't mind, no. In fact, napag-usapan rin yan sa school-based feeding program, but di na lang magpatayo ng canteen yung locality and then bigyan mo ng cash yung mga stunted para bumili dun sa canteen, tapos yung canteen sumusunod dun sa nutritional, di ba, chine-check natin. Kasi sa totoo lang, si Ms. Alpuerto gumaganon. Alam ko po, mas you want something na sigurado, but even yung sinatawag nating sigurado, yung mga buns ganyan, honestly, on the ground, hindi nyo rin naman na-check kung pasok. But at least kung hot meal yan, may protina, may carbohydrate, may that could be a simpler solution to our school-based feeding program than getting all of these suppliers to create Nutribans, no? Anyway, naman, ang usapan naman namin with DepEd is they will try different modalities and see how we can see what the best is, no? Okay, so it's already 11:30. I think what we've done is we've uncovered that we have a lot more work to do, no, sa issue na ito. We'll call for a TWG. Anyway, initially kasi po, Secretary, I was hoping if we could get to a firmer solution, pwede tayo maghabol ng funding solution. But I don't think funding is the problem really. It's really structural, no? So, baka we can do a TWG with the agencies involved, maybe DOH and, DILG is here, but somebody from DOH apart from NNC can come also. So, pag-usapan natin, if we could reset everything and really come up with the best structure and facility for this, cognizant of the current programs, diba, that are working, maybe we can then amend the parts of the law that talk about this and set everything correctly. no? Yung tamang agencies and accountabilities. Maganda rin siguro if we can get LMP, LCP to join us kasi parang yung papunta, tama ba to, Attorney Sala? Parang papunta talaga tayo sa LGU sa mag-implement ng community-based programs, no?
Yes po.
Parang doon talaga tayo papunta.
Kasi
So-
lahat ng mga programs naman, si LGU yung ginagawa siyang implementing agency, implementing ano.
Maybe before the TWG, you can already find out what percentage of LGUs are actually implementing the feeding programs. Kasi hindi siya 100%, no?
Yes po. Hindi ko po sure, pero yung alam ko po, based sa data sa slides namin, yung may problema din po yung LGUs as to the Philippine Plan on Action for Nutrition, yung local nutrition plan, hindi lahat nagsasubmit. So, yung local nutrition plan
So it's
po,
likely kung hindi ka nag-submit, malamang wala kang feeding
there
program.
might be problem with your nutrition programs.
So we can use it as an indicator on how many LGUs are actually implementing the feeding program, no? Kasi ito, ang na-imagine ko kasi si NNC can provide the guidelines. Ano yung dapat na ipakain sa mga bata in different formats, 'di ba? Kung ano ba to? Droplets ba to, juice ba to, gatas ba to, or what, 'di ba? And then DSWD or DOH, depending on kung anong gusto ni Secretary, can be the monitoring, 'di ba? And then the implementer can be the LGUs. The ILG can incentivize the LGUs doing the feeding programs, or it can be one of the indicators. But we can also mandate na kailangan gawin siya. Kasi kung ganito katindi yung problema, nakakabahala na we don't have a clear solution right now. No? To be fair, yung school-based feeding, a lot of work has been put into that. Marami pa ring issues, but at least there's something, di ba? And medyo na-imagine natin how it's gonna be done. Ito kasi, there's still so much to be done. And I don't think we'll be able to resolve it now. I also don't think we'll be able to come up with a what I had intended, which was a fast break suggestion to finance to see if we could fund this. But it's not funding, no. It's really structural. So let's maybe we can have a TWG next year. Pag-usapan natin to. Doc Carol might be joining us from the agency side already, di ba? Who knows? But tama ba to? We'll call on DepEd or hindi na kailangan ng DepEd dito? Actually, hindi, no? Hindi kailangan. It's really DOH, DILG, DSWD, and NNC as an attached, and then ECCD as attached also. So 5. And we'll use the committee as the forum to meet. Secretary, you can... sino po ba yung mismong on top dito na USEC or ASEC?
Dalawa sila. Si Yusek Ado Sulit is the planning, but the actual implementation is Yusek Romualdez.
Okay.
So that's why I brought the two of them today.
So maybe po in January, we can have the TWG then. And let's start, let's look for what the best structure is. Kasi sometimes, sabi nga si NNC, ang raming mga batas, ang raming mga executive order, we accommodate what's already there. But the law can actually be a reset, no? And we can take a step back, draw up the best plan, the easiest, simplest, and clearest way to get the objectives done. And we can use the committee and the bill as the way forward for this, no? I'm sure na pag-uusapan nyo rin to sa cabinet secretary that this problem is a big problem already, or napag-usapan na actually. And I don't mind that we try to reconfigure ourselves to address this. I think we can take few months to figure this out, and then for 2027 kung kailangan ng bigger funding like what we've seen with the classrooms or with the school-based feeding program, we'll push for it then. Okay. Secretary, maybe you can have the last word for today.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again for giving DSWD the chance to speak out. Ako, I feel bad for saying that to kainan, madam, pero nothing personal. It's been my personal advocacy to flag it down. But Mr. Chairman, just as a footnote, tama ho kayo, Carol was there, the President made this priority number 1. And I think he will be very happy if we can propose a structure that to get it done. And I know legislation is timeless, but it also takes time. But I think I would not mind, together with Carol, that we go see the President and show him the structure we created, maybe a form of an EO with his permission para lang to get things going also. But again, the brain power required to figure it out, I leave to the good committee and all its guests.
Where the venue will be the venue. Do you want the TWG this year? Or are
We'll
you
make
okay with
ourselves,
next year?
we will always make ourselves available whenever the committee calls us.
Sige, we'll discuss it po kasi obviously the budget is our priority right now. In fact, napayagan lang kami to have this hearing because I really thought, so maybe I was a little naive about it, but I really thought from this hearing, we could come up with a funding solution to this, no? And then mahabol pa natin by Friday, which is the period of amendments. But I think it's pretty clear na let's take a step back and try to assess everything again, no? So we'll ano. Yes, Dr. Batad. Director Batad.
Okay, thank you very much for holding this very important hearing. I am Dr. Lisa Batad of the Philippine Carabao Center, together with NDA and at the same time the Department of Agriculture, representing the Farmers Association and Cooperative that are implementing the milk feeding program. To Secretary Gatchalian of the SWD, let us we want to convey our sincere and grateful appreciation of the excellent implementation of the DSWD milk feeding program. It has been consistent for 120 days since 2019. If we can only expand the 10% to 30% of the daycare milk feeding program, I think this is one of the good solution of giving the opportunity to the smallhold dairy farmers and cooperative that invested already on their milk processing facilities. So, salamat po, Secretary and the entire team of the SWD for allowing this the chance for farmers that are dependent on dairy to also improve their lives. So, salamat. Sana for 2026 po, is ituloy po ng DSWD yung milk feeding program.
Is there a current milk feeding program for DSWD? And does that funding go to DSWD? And then, or
Yeah,
it goes straight
apo.
to NDA and PCC?
Yes, MOA with PCC and NDA. And salamat po sa 120 days at nababayaran po agad.
Parang
yung-
pass-through yan, Secretary?
Opo.
Parang
Opo.
pass-through?
Opo.
It's a pass-through. Okay, kasi sa DepEd
Thank you.
currently kasi, and that's why there have been complaints, no, na it's left to the local schools to work directly with the farmers at nagkakagulo doon. So currently, and we got consensus na from Senator Gatchalian and Secretary Angara that we will try to carve out part of the milk feeding program of DepEd and put it back with NDA. And I think PCC is connected to NDA, right? Diba? Are you an attached agency? You are, diba?
We are an attached agency of the Department of Agriculture.
So between NDA and PCC, you're at the same level?
yes.
Okay, so I
yes.
think the plan is to carve out a part of that and
to PCC and
they give it
NDA.
back to you because you deal with the farmers directly.
Apo.
But the only request that DepEd gave yesterday was for NDA and PCC to identify what are the areas that you can really service at a high service level. Meaning, walang fear of spoilage. I in previous conversations with farmers groups, I know that once may cooler na at may ice na, tumataas rin yung cost eh. 'Di ba? And it's not sustainable anymore. So, we're willing to work with you. As the dairy industry grows, we can grow this budget. But you have to be very frank with us on what are the areas that you can really service well. Nakikita rin yung farmers. Kasi baka nagsa-service kayo, ilugi na sila kasi they have to spend on logistics or other costs na hindi naman kasama sa production cost. And these are the complaints of the farmers rin na when they were trying to expand their market and they had to work with areas outside of their usual zones because of the price of the ice, the delivery, the coolers, nagiging hindi na rin siya sustainable. So walang natutuwa, no? The children don't get the good milk, the farmers nalulugi, and we're not able to fulfill the program. So the suggestion was, can you identify what provinces, cities, or parts of baka nga districts pa to or municipalities that you can really serve, and then we'll allow DepEd to look for other options to fulfill that nutritional requirement. Hindi natin pipilitin. But as you grow, and as the industry grows, we commit to also grow that. Pero kailangan prangka po tayo with each other, no? Kasi when we put it in the law, I think there was an expectation that you could service the majority of the country, and that's not the case. That's not really the case right now, no? I know a lot of farmers groups will say, hindi, kaya yan. But di na siya sustainable kasi we have to spend for refrigerators, kuryente, and all of that. But we're willing to do this with you. Friday na po yung amendments natin, so we need to work fast, no? Anyway, I think we're in contact already. Yesterday, nag-usap na po ang DepEd at yung mga ahensya, no? Tama naman po, no?
Opo. We're really working closely with your team po.
Hindi kaya, can't we just follow the system of DSWD? Can't DepEd just have a MOA with them? And then, pag nalipat po ng DSWD yung pera sa inyo, 100% yon or may bawas?
Ano pong bawa?
No, kung yung MOA nyo with DSWD, kunyari yung pondo, kunyari, 100%, pag nilipat ba, 100% pa rin? Or may,
I
ano siya,
think so.
may mga fees siya?
Buo.
Buo po.
So parang pass-through lang talaga?
Yeah, pass-through lang talaga.
Opo,
Okay.
pass-through.
Could we possibly do that with DepEd? Transfer lang sa kanila?
Actually, Senator, it was passed through from 2019 to 2023.
I see.
Yeah.
So it was passed through from 2019 to
Yeah.
2023.
When the milk feeding law was implemented, it was passed through.
Okay.
So NDA and PCC directly handled the fund downloaded to us, and we did it for
4 years.
4 years.
Why did you devolve it? Bakit nagpalit ng policy ang DepEd?
Well, so right now, Senator, hindi naman po naka-devolve yung pera. Nasa SDO po, and then operated po ito ng operations of MOA between DepEd and then NDA. So, nasa DepEd po, and then we engage them in terms of providing QA for the milk. So, ang nagpo-procure po ng milk natin, ang mga school division offices po natin. Binaba po namin yan kasi mas closer sila doon sa mga farmers.
Okay. So ano yung nag-iba ulit? Nag-iba yung polisiya in 2023, no? And then the farmers had to deal with the schools, the SDOs directly, no? Bakit ho nag-iba ulit yung policy? I'm sorry.
Well, during po kasi ng pandemic,
Okay.
doon po nagbago. After the pandemic, medyo, alimbawa, dati more of hot meal kami, pero during the pandemic, nag-shift kami doon sa nutritious food packs. And then after the pandemic, parang ganun na yung nangyari po.
Kung ibalik na lang natin sa old system na may MOA kayo, pwede rin.
Ganun naman po ang operation ngayon po. May MOA kami
No.
with NDA.
There's a difference, because right now we're moving the whole budget to their line item. But if there's a MOA, it can be similar to the DSWD model na it goes to the agency, then the agency has a MOA with you, parang pass-through rin siya. Kasi if the DSWD program is working, we can just copy that, no? Tama ba, ma'am?
Po. During the 2019 and 2023, we followed the Sagip-Saka community participation. So, we veer away the bidding because the bidding process will only make the cooperative compete with each other. So, if it's going to be the approach of DSWD, through the Sagip-Saka procurement, sigurado po tayo na ang magbe-benefit talaga
Yung local
is yung
farmers, no?
local farmers.
Okay. Sige po. Anyway,
So,
we're discussing this now.
Opo.
And there's already consensus that we wish to support NDA and PCC and the farmers directly. But we just have to really figure out the details, no? Anyway, mahahabol ho natin yan. Kung hindi, we can work with DepEd na maybe a similar scheme as before na may MOA po kayo. But
Thank
anyway,
you.
pinag-uusapan
Thank
pa
you
naman
very
po.
much po.
Sige po. So let
120 days po sana.
Kasi hindi lang 30.
Hindi lang po 30.
Okay.
Opo. Thank you po.
So we'd like to thank everyone here. We will be calling for a TWG Yes, and we're suspending this hearing, and we'd like to thank everyone. Yes, Carol.
Sir, sorry. Huling hirit lang po. Just in relation to the deadline on Friday. Operation Timbang po kasi is able to really find the kids 0 to 5 years old and categorize them based on who are underweight or malnourished. What if, yes, we don't need to fund the universe of 200,000 that are unreached by the current system, but in the context of pilots as discussed earlier, or maybe just exploring what are possible solutions while we figure out the bill that will need to or possibly fix the problem of the governance challenge that we are facing today, what if at least maybe just a grant that would allow us to, kasi naka-screen naman, ang assumption po natin, alam ng LGUs, kasi siniscreen naman yan ng mga BNS at BHWs kung sino yung mga hindi nare-reach. What if there is a grant that LGUs can apply for if they have a huge number of malnourished children aged 2 to 5 that they can then get support for, and while we are doing that and fixing the bill, then we are getting an understanding of what models can work given the context of LGUs. Malinaw lang po kasi sa pag-aaral natin po na maraming low-income LGUs, gustuhin man nila, alam man nila ang problema, wala silang resources. And our challenge is that we find that in our data, for example, highest stunting rates at above 15% that are 4th to 5th to 6th class, there are about 170 of them. Kahit maliit lang pong pilot, simulan lang pag-isipan, makahanap ng models if that is possible for consideration.
The agencies can of course do a pilot if they wish, diba? I mean, that's within their power.
Yeah.
But I think what we need to do right now is really to identify the numbers, the current capacity of the agencies, how we're going to reach them. By all means, anyone can, of course, do a pilot. But for the committee, let's be the venue na muna to figure it out. And then, if an EO can be made from there, I think that would be great. Habulin natin yung batas eventually. But I think because what created this are different laws that don't really jibe well with each other. I think we will need to use the amendments as a way to correct the current structures. Kasi iba-ibang mga batas, nagpasok-pasok, na-assign dito, na-assign dyan. In the end, parang walang na-assign, no? And we can use the venue to just put everything together, and EO can be a stopgap, but I think an amendment of the law will be better in the end, no? So thank you po. We'd like to thank everyone, especially Secretary
Bam,
Rex.
excuse po.
Yes.
Gusto lang po namin i-clarify from the National Nutrition Council, especially with the manifestation of our good Secretary of the SWD. Kasi po, ang specific objectives po ng TK for those who do hindi pa po nakakaalam, ay magpo-provide kami ng supplemental food feeding program for our pregnant women for 90 calendar days and complementary food for children 6 to 23 months for 180 days, di po ba? So ngayon, yung manifestation po, kasi clarify lang po natin yung manifestation ni Secretary kanina na yung mga buntis po ay kumakain po sa feeding centers. Actually, yung mga buntis po natin, ay meron po silang mga sarili, meron po kaming menu na pinoprovide sa barangay. So, for them to get their yung mga pagkain na lulutuin nila sa bahay nila. Actually, hindi naman po lahat ng panahon. Well, there are times na papakainin sila sa feeding area, but then most of the time, they're going to get that menu or ingredients para sa kanila lulutuin sa bahay to be shared by the family.
Okay.
Ngayon po, kung cash grants po kasi yan, hindi po namin mawari kung paano gagastusin ng parents. Most likely po, pareho lang din po yan sa mga feedback ng ating mga beneficiaries ng 4Ps na hindi talaga siya doon nakatutok sa pagkain. Ganon. So, yan lang din po ang worry namin na baka mamaya hindi din serve yung objective kung ganun po ang ating iisipin. So sana po pagbigyan ng pagkakataon kung pwede kami na mag-implement, pero kung hindi naman, okay din kami na i-provide namin yung methodologies ng NNC. Yes po.
Okay.
That would be all. Thank you so much.
Sige. Thank you everybody. Maraming salamat, especially to Secretary Rex for his time. Thank you everyone. Hearing is suspended. Salamat po.